SCP-033 is called the missing number. Now, I don't know much about this SCP, but I do know it's kind of cryptic and it's much different than some entity that we're usually, no scary monsters, you know, that we're usually talking about in the SCP universe. So let's check it out, guys. This one is by SCP Explained. Make sure to subscribe to him. Subscribe to me if you like reaction videos, and let's get into this one.
It has been said that 1 is the loneliest number that you will ever know. But at least the number 1 is a number that can actually be known. What could we possibly mean by that? We'll try to imagine a number that cannot possibly be known or quantified. A missing number,
like infinity.
if you will. No, not that one. This is a number that you can never put into an equation or a formula, and it does not appear in the numerical sequence. You cannot count to it, add to, divide, or multiply by
it's infinity, though, right?
Or even see it.
Infinity
and yet
is
this number
a number,
still somehow exists.
Maybe?
Sounds impossible, doesn't it? After all, the mathematicians among you will understand that the numbers are not a force of nature.
Not a real
They
good
are a metaphysical aspect of our reality, like space or time.
Like calculus.
Numbers are a tool,
Physics,
in a way.
You know?
A tool created by human beings.
That's right.
We use them to measure and calculate. Numbers help
based
us make
on
some
our
sense
own
of
perception.
this crazy world that we all live in.
Right.
Just ask your math teacher, and they'll tell you how important numbers are to human civilization.
That's correct.
The point is, ancient mathematicians invented numbers, so how could a number ever be missing? What makes a number unknowable? Well, perhaps it's time you learned. Math class is in session, and today we're talking about SCP-033, also known by the appropriate nickname of the missing number. As you may have already gathered, the whole point of SCP-033 is that it can't fully be understood by the ordinary human mind.
Correct.
Even highly trained mathematicians, experts in the use of numbers, able to understand the most complex equations, are barely able to interpret the formula that results in this missing number.
Wow.
At present, it exists written down on an irregularly shaped piece of paper. This paper does not have any right angles, no parallel borders, and the length of each side is different from all others.
What?
The SCP Foundation keeps this paper stored securely, locked up at the minimum safe distance of 30 meters away from any computer or other electronic device. On the paper itself is the mathematical formula that equals SCP-033. As you can probably imagine, the formula is intensely complex.
Of course.
It is filled with mathematical symbols ranging from common ones that you would immediately recognize,
like
to
E
those that are
MC
way more
squared.
sophisticated and would likely require a PhD to fully understand.
Okay.
And then there are parts of this unfathomable problem that would baffle even the world's most notable math geniuses.
Sure.
But all these symbols and numbers coalesce to equal a number that has somehow been missed by all of humanity throughout the entire history of our civilization. One noted mathematician by the name of Professor Hutchinson, who first observed the calculation of SCP-033, referred to the missing number as theta prime. Okay, so here we have a number that can barely be understood by the average person, created by a formula so complex that when written down it might as well be a page full of gibberish. Surely there couldn't be anything more to it than that, right? Wrong. You should know by now that the SCP Foundation doesn't concern themselves with the mundane, ordinary type of strange.
It has to be bizarre.
They deal exclusively in the kind of strange that has
Anomaly.
anomalous origins and properties.
Right.
In the case of SCP-033, the missing number is so complex that it practically breaks every and all rules of mathematics. In other words, theta prime cannot possibly remain fixed within our reality. The reason why the paper theta prime is written on has to have such unusual dimensions is due to the anomalous effect of the number. When written on ordinary paper, canvas, or any other similar surface or material, the missing number will begin to break down whatever it has been written on. It will literally erode and disintegrate anything on a molecular level.
Wow.
You might be forgiven for thinking you could get around that by typing out the equation for theta prime on a computer.
It'll destroy a
But
computer?
You would be wrong. This reaction even affects technology, burning out any and all devices someone attempts to digitally store SCP-033
So that's
on.
why it's not
And
close
if
to the
written on
computers
literally
and
anything
stuff.
else, well, then the missing number will fade, become obscured and unintelligible in a matter of seconds, unreadable to anyone. We've talked a lot about what SCP-033 does, mainly because we can't really show or tell you what it looks like. Well, unless you want your computer, phone, or tablet to break down and melt from the inside out.
No, we
like
don't
we
want that.
mentioned earlier, Theta Prime cannot remain fixed in our reality, and it will fade away from any surface or destroy any devices used to display or calculate it. But the anomalous effects of the missing number do not stop there. SCP-033 also possesses the ability to leap from any safe material, like the paper of specific dimensions that it is written and stored on. That is why the safe containing the paper with the missing number equations written on it has to be kept a certain distance away from any electronic devices or other surfaces that can display Theta Prime. Should a material safely storing SCP-033 come into contact with anything unsafe, say a computer, then the missing number will pass on to the unsafe device, material, or surface and begin to destabilize its atomic structure. Any paper or electronic storage device within a 30-meter safe distance of SCP-033 risks becoming a victim of Theta Prime, almost as if the number itself is an infectious virus. Although the SCP Foundation's top researchers have tried their best to find one,
it's like a
there currently exists no safe way to store SCP-033 digitally. The Foundation has a number of projects that are still ongoing, looking into the best possible method to store the missing number electronically, without posing a risk to their computer systems. Additionally, the Foundation has long been conducting research of a different nature, trying to find some way of weaponizing SCP-033. It doesn't seem like a bad idea, right? After all, Theta Prime functions a lot like a computer virus when it comes into contact with machines. So why wouldn't they try to use it as a weapon? It is the goal of these projects that the Foundation will be able to use the missing number as a way to neutralize hostile machine SCPs. Any anomalies that they encounter that operate on logic-based systems, such as artificial intelligences, could in theory be susceptible to the destructive effects of SCP-033.
Oh look, he threw
Within the SCP
at
archive file for the missing number is a classified article that details more about the discovery of SCP-033. Before going on to explore the results of the Foundation's testing with Theta Prime's use as a cyber weapon of sorts. First and foremost is a transcript from a debriefing with Professor Hutchison. If you were paying attention earlier, then you will remember that this is the same Professor Hutchison that first observed SCP-033. And as a noted mathematician, he has some invaluable inside knowledge on the nature of Theta Prime, as he calls it.
Every schoolchild knows that 2 + 2 is 4. The solid mathematical certainty of numerical order and value is the basis for all logic-based systems. We know that after 2 comes 3, and after 3 comes 4. What this formula proves is that we missed a number somewhere. Imagine if all our technology was based on the belief that after 4 came 6. We simply didn't know or conceive of 5. That is, in essence, what this formula proves.
That's kind of crazy to think about.
The professor then goes on to ponder why handcrafted vellum works the best for containing SCP-033. Vellum is essentially an older type of fine parchment that originally would have been made from the skin of a calf or other young animal. Professor Hutchinson seems to theorize that there are 2 ways this particular material is able to keep SCP-033 written on it.
1. The irregularity of the crafting process due to human error serves to eliminate any traces of regularity that would be found in a machine-created product. 2. The irregular borders seem to confuse it somehow, as if it gets locked up looking for a pattern to identify and use as an escape hatch. I'll tell you this, though. I don't think it should be left on anything longer than a few days. It will find a pattern eventually.
Finally, Professor Hutchinson then goes on to talk about the anomalous effects of the missing number, specifically its ability to destroy materials or computers that it comes into contact with. Hutchinson posits a theory that Theta Prime does not actually destroy anything, but instead tries to integrate itself into a system or onto a page. But the system or page cannot cope with the missing number, and so breaks down. It is almost as if he thinks the number itself wants to be understood. It longs for humanity to understand it after having been missed for so very, very long. But Theta Prime is so utterly beyond our understanding that it has the potential to be devastating.
Of course.
It's like trying to cram another book into a completely full bookshelf. If you get a hammer, you can get it in there, but the whole shelf bursts eventually. If it gets out into the internet, we will potentially experience a full IT infrastructure collapse within hours.
During one of their numerous tests with SCP-033, the Foundation's researchers wrote the various equations and formulae that equal Theta Prime on a standard piece of white copy paper, referred to as X1. Then they placed a second sheet, x2 just 30 centimeters away from x1. Within about a minute, the same mathematical symbols and formulae on x1 had started to appear on x2. After 160 seconds, the second page was full with the complex equation for the missing number. After around 5 minutes, both x1 and x2 began to appear slightly damp. However, theta prime and its related equations were still visible on the pages.
Weird.
After double that time, the first page x1 had begun to separate, dissolving partly into water and the rest into the pulp that had formed the paper itself. While it still kept the same standard shape and size, the formulae written on it had since become unreadable. X2 was still wet as well, but SCP-033 was still visible. After over 21 minutes had passed, X1 had been completely destroyed. The water component of it had evaporated, and the paper pulp had also disappeared. The second page, X2, soon followed the exact same process of being structurally broken down and unmade atom by atom until there was nothing
That's
left.
Scary, man.
It becomes terrifying.
So what happens
to
if
think
you
what
do
might
understand
happen if you wrote the equations for the missing number on another human being?
Right.
While their testing has yet to produce any tangible results,
what happens if your brain actually understood
staff
it?
always make sure they transfer the missing number onto a whiteboard or chalkboard whenever studying it. Upon doing so, researchers are instructed to incinerate the paper that SCP-033 was written on previously, preventing multiple instances of theta prime and hopefully stopping the number from spreading any further. Any researchers observing or experimenting with SCP-033 must do so within a safe distance, away from computers and other devices. Testing can only occur for a maximum of 42 minutes before the missing number will destroy the surface it is written on, or fade
so they do have a window of time
dangerous,
that they can
volatile,
study it.
and potentially hugely destructive if it ever fell into the wrong hands.
Of course.
Theta Prime is a strangely insightful SCP. Knowing there exists a missing number must be similar to how mathematicians felt about the introduction of variables. You will probably have seen these a lot in your algebra homework.
When I got to variables, I hated it.
Like SCP-033,
simple algebra was easy, like
that is also a number that cannot fully exist in our reality unless you figure out its value. It influences the calculations you have to make to find it, but it cannot be seen or understood fully at first. Perhaps there will come a day where we can store the missing number properly, but until then, we can only hope it never finds its way into our favorite notebook. Now go check out SCP-1861
This was really cool, man. It's interesting. Like, the idea that it would get understood by someone, how would you communicate it? You know what I mean? At that point, it might just fry your brain. And getting into the internet seems scary too. This was really cool, guys. Make sure to check out SCP Explained, y'all. Subscribe to me if you like reaction videos too. Thanks so much for watching. As always, it's Zueljin signing off. We'll see you next time.